a basic Blackboard 9 assessment is made. This general procedure should be the key to creating many different varieties, just using different variations of it. So first things first, of course, sign into Blackboard because that is where this will all take place. Then you're simply going to select the Blackboard course that you would like to put this in. I'm going to choose the BB9 assessment site because that's what you guys are going to be familiar with. Then you clicked on your sidebar what content area you would like to insert your test in. I'm going to select multiple choice because we're going to do a multiple choice test today. Then on your top menu bar you see the word assessment up here. You are going to select assessments and then test underneath that. This will bring you to your general menu. If you already have tests created, this is where you can select the test and directly deploy it from there. Or you can hit create to create a new test. Now I'm going to create a test that is named test. The only thing required for the test is that you give it a title. I like to include descriptions, especially if it's relating to a specific standard or if I'm asking for certain expectations on this test. And instructions are obviously, as it says, instructions as to exactly what they need to do, like select the multiple choice, things like that. I just did tests for these purposes, and then I'm going to select submit to go to the next step. Now it brings me to this screen because I need to create questions to go into my new test. I create a question. Here are all the different types that I can use. There are lots of them and they all work pretty smoothly. We're going to go through the multiple choice right now because that's the basic one that we can apply to just about any content area. So once I've selected multiple choice, I do not put a question title in ever. Just haven't found a need to, but you may want to someday. It is available if you do. Question text, on the other hand, is required. This is where you would type your question, like, where do bananas grow? Could be a question. And I could now look at the bottom. It gives me some options for my answers. I don't have my answers numbered, and I don't care about the orientation just because of ease and making this process go quicker. You can allow partial credit. It is a little quirky, but you can do it. I like to select show answers in random order because then this avoids any of the looking at the person's iPad to your left or to your right. Then you get to the answers part, and it automatically gives you 4 answers. You can increase or decrease that as you choose. You can have an insane amount of answers. And it always selects your first answer as the correct one. Because I randomize my order, I don't care what order my answers go in, and I can do whatever. And I can just type random words in there, or letters relate, to fill all of my spaces. And all of my answers are correct. I can give feedback. It can be simple as I've seen people do smiley faces for positive feedback and frowny faces for negative feedback. Students will see this either directly after they answer the question or directly after they finish the test, whichever settings you select. I don't select any categories, topics, or difficulty levels because I normally know what my assessment's for. Same thing with teacher notes, I normally don't use them. On the bottom we have 2 options. We can either submit and create another, which will open a new screen that looks exactly like this, and we can use it to create another multiple choice. It's kind of like a shortcut, saving yourself some steps. But for today I'm just going to submit because I only want a 1-question quiz. And when we get to this home screen, we see that my multiple choice is right there. It's showing me where do bananas grow, giving me my 4 answers. Shows me what feedback I'm giving, and also indicates that my top one is my correct answer with the green check mark. Now let's say I'm done. I don't need any more questions. I can also look here at the points value here. If you're grading on a 1 to 4 scale, I like to, and only giving like 4 questions or only giving 8 questions, I would give the value, like if I was giving 8 questions, I'd give like a 0.5 for each question. Therefore, I would have to do less math when I'm trying to figure out what score to enter into the grade book. But for this case, because I only have 1 question and I want it to be out of 4, I would give that a value of 4. It would show up in my grade book. Make sure you select submit like I just did not do and messed it up when you enter that. Now it will show up on my grade center as a value of 4 or less. Now when I'm done with that, I simply hit OK down here on the bottom. Now my last test is right here. I need to highlight this. It is not deployed to my students yet. So my next step is to deploy it to students. And I like to go right ahead and select submit after I've chosen my test. And I see my content description is up here and sort of my instructions. I like to show both before I give them to my students. It's just my personal preference. And then I also check right away, make test available, because otherwise students cannot see the test and cannot take it. On the other hand, this is useful if you're creating things ahead of time, but right now it's not necessary. I always make mine available because most of my students don't want to work ahead anyway. You can select multiple attempts. Say you're saying, oh, it's probable my kids are going to need to take this twice to do well. Or I don't care how many times they take it, I just want them to take it and do well on it. That is where you would change your multiple attempts. And then this will show up down here and you will select which attempt you want graded. Forced completion can be a little tricky. I started out the school year using forced completion, and then I had students like, but Miss H, I didn't finish, or wait, I thought I could finish it after I left class. And so just for the communication piece and students being able to do it with flexibility, I stopped checking that box. You can set a self-timer, which is super nice if you don't want kids to be able to spend a super long amount of time on it. You can force them to finish it within a certain amount of time. You can also say, you can see this after a certain date. And you can also require a password for students to see that. The one option that I do love is to add a user group. You need to add a user group in order to separate into grading classes. So if you have groups created in your Blackboard under your grading center, you would need to select, for example, group Algebra 1 or group Algebra 1 Hour 2 or world geography, whatever class you're trying to assess at that point, so that you're not mixing your hours up and having to look through all of your students in order to find that information. So you would simply check the person. I don't have anybody enrolled in this class yet, so I would have one person to select, but you would hit select your group, hit submit, and you'd be ready to go. Now, for the rest of the options, I leave them as is. You can change when you want students to get feedback. They can see all the answers. They can see whether or not they're correct or not, your choice. One thing that I do like to keep checked, I like students to be able to see all my questions at once. This allows me, if I have a multiple choice simple assessment, my students can see it on both the Safari or Chrome or whatever browser they're using, or on the Blackboard 9 app. So by selecting this all at once button, students can see it whenever. I also like to randomize my questions, just adding that other factor of randomization so students aren't affected by what their neighbor is having. And then you hit submit and your test is ready to be deployed. It takes you to your original screen, always puts the newest thing on the bottom. You can see I deployed it down here on the bottom. It is ready to take. If you clicked on it, it will show you a student view of what they would see. See, there's my question 1. Select my answer, save and submit. Student view is looking exactly like I want it to. So from here you can experiment with the different question types, inserting crazy new things, trying adaptive reliefs and such, but these basics should take you just about anywhere.